Good morning. This is Rabbi Kalman Akiva Kovacs. It is a true zechus, a pleasure to begin learning the Mishnah Yomi with you. Today we are in Perek 5, Mishnayot 9 and 10. And Mishnah Tes states, Me'asrin Mishel Yisrael al shel Ovid Kochavim. You can take Meiser from the produce of a Jew on to exempt the produce of a non-Jew. Now we're talking about where no one's taken Truma or Meiser yet, so everything needs to be fixed up by taking Truma. The Mishnah continues, Mishel Ovid Kochavim El Yisrael, from a idol worshiper onto the produce of a Jew. Mishel Yisrael El Shel Kutim, from a Jew onto the Kutim. The Kutim were this idolatrous nation that were moved by Sancheriv to Israel and then converted when they were attacked by lions. And there were a lot of shilas about their religiosity and the validity of their conversion. More on that in a second. Mishel Kutim, also Kutim, and from Kutim on other Kuthians. Rabbi Eliezer Oser Mishel Kutim, all Shel Kutim. And the reason Rabbi Eliezer differs and says you can't take Truma and Meiser from produce obtained from one Kuti to exempt the produce of another Kuthian is because some of them do take Truma and Meiser. Rabbi Eliezer points out that some of them are adherent to the mitzvot and are going to go ahead and take Truma correctly, and other ones not. Now, later on in history, our sages went up to Har Grizim and found these Kutim were worshipping idols of a dove on Har Grizim in Samaria, which of historical interest, it's notable when someone says good Samaritan, that's referring to the Kutim, and they're saying good because most of them were evil and idolaters, and very few of them were careful in the mitzvahs. But Rabbi Eliezer is concerned the ones that are careful in the mitzvahs are going to take Truma. So you might have a case where you've got crops, produce from one Kuti who was meticulous in the mitzvahs, and he took the Truma. So if you try to take Truma from that onto produce from another Kuti who never took the Truma, that will be invalid. This theme continues in Mishnah Yud, Atzitz Nakuv, a flower pot with a hole, Hareze Ka'aretz, because it has holes in the bottom, it's considered halachically connected to the ground underneath. Tarim me'aretz, you can take truma from crops that grew literally in the ground, alatzitz nakuv, onto produce that grew in this pot that has holes and is therefore connected to the ground halachically. Maltitz nakuv ala aretz, and vice versa, you can take truma from what grew in this pot, this holy pot as it was, and that exempts what grew from the land. Trumato truma, that's a valid truma. Now here's the wrinkle here. Mishe'enu nakuv al nakuv. What if you took truma off of something that you grew in a flower pot with no holes? The eno nakuv. It has no nekavim. It has no holes to connect it to the ground. Al nakuv truma. So that's truma in the sense that you have to give it to a Kohen because you've designated truma. Vayachazer v'yitrum. But you have to go back and take truma again from the produce that you grew in the flower pot that does have holes, because the produce grown in a pot with no holes, with no connection to the land, is only chayev in Truma and Meiser d'Rabbanan. So taking produce on something that's only chayev mid-Rabbanan to try to exempt some produce that's chayev d'Oraisa, it doesn't work. So what you did is Truma d'Rabbanan has to be given to a Kohen, but you have to go back and take another Truma to satisfy the produce that was grown in the holy pot, the pot with holes in the bottom, which is chayev d'Oraisa. Mishnah continues, Mina nakuv al she'enu nakuv. What if you took produce from the crops that were grown in the pot that had a hole, that's chayev d'Oraisa, to try to exempt the produce that was not chayev d'Oraisa, only d'Rabbanan, truma. This truma must be given to the Kohen, v'lo ta'achel, but the Kohen can't eat it yet because it's still tevel. On a d'Oraisa level, it's tevel because this produce didn't have to be tithed, because he took this tithe, separated this food out of something that was grown in a non-attached, unholy, eno naku flower pot. So the Kohen you give it to has to actually take Truma and Meiser from what you gave him, because what you gave him was grown in a pot that's not chayev d'Oraisa. So when you separated it out, this wasn't really Truma d'Oraisa. Shkoyach Rabosai, be well.